Yes, it's true, Mr. Rouges is back with a new video, which means that hell must have frozen over. As of course we all know, there's a new animated Batman show out, and I just couldn't resist giving my 2 cents about the show's villains, so I dragged myself out of retirement to make a new video. I'm too lazy to do an individual spotlight on each villain, so I just decided to do the easy thing, make a not top 10 list in this case, but a list ranking them from worst to best. So here we go. Number 9, Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia could have been any guy in this show. He's just a hitman who leads a group of gunmen hired to take out Gordon. There's literally no character to him, and he could have been anyone from Deadshot to KG Beast to Killer Croc. Any villain, even a no-named goon, could have filled this role. The only thing he has in common with the character from the comics is his mask and the fact that he speaks in onomatopoeias. But you see, this onomatopoeia gimmick just doesn't work. I've said it before, and Kevin Smith himself, creator of the character, has said it. This guy just don't work outside comics. On the comic page, we get a word balloon containing an onomatopoeia out of this guy's mouth. Now, just seeing it like this, we don't know if he's just saying the sound out loud like bam or crack, or if he's actually mimicking the noise that's made, like in some almost supernatural way. And this mystery was the intent, but when you put him in a show like this, the mystery is ruined. And here we find out that he's actually just saying the onomatopoeia. Blam. And I have to say, it's pretty damn lame. Number 8, the Femguin. Penguin was of course famously made into a woman on this show, and it seems like they did it for no real reason whatsoever except to do something different. Because they don't really utilize Penguin's newfound womanhood in any substantial way. It's just a superficial makeover, except for the fact that he's a cabaret singer now, I guess. Besides the whole gender swap thing, there's nothing really to this Penguin. She's just an evil villain who does, evil stuff. Nothing interesting is being done with her. If it weren't for the fact that this Penguin is a woman, this take on the character would have been completely unremarkable. And that is not a good thing. A penguin wearing lipsticks, wearing a giant bosom and doing a song and dance number is a little hard for me to take seriously too. It just looks comical in my opinion. Number 7, Firebug. Firebug was actually good in this show, but he barely appeared and was only used as a plot device. His episode wasn't actually about him. He's also really Firefly, not Firebug. They even make a joke about it on the show, having characters mistakenly call him Firefly. So why not just make him Firefly? His personality and character is all Firefly, not Bug. Weird and confusing. Number 6, Gentleman Ghost. Gentleman Ghost is fine on the show, I guess. He's just a little boring. I had a pretty hard time getting invested in his episode. A ghost riding around robbing people, with not much personality except evil. Okay. Also, they changed his design. Why would they change his design? This is perfection. The invisible guy wearing a Victorian-era outfit, as if it's floating around in mid-air. This design is the main reason the character is as cool as he is. Number 5, Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is nothing like Harley Quinn in the show. Bruce Timm wanted to completely divorce her from the Joker and from the original Harley that he helped create back in the animated series. I can understand wanting to do that, but it also means you're changing her just for the sake of changing her. It ends up feeling very forced and unorganic on the show. If anything, the character we get on the show is more like Hugo Strange. This can make you wonder why they didn't just use Hugo Strange instead. A cerebral psychiatrist who's using people's secrets to blackmail them. Besides one throwaway line, the Harlequin motif don't really come into play either. In the end, a failed and misguided attempt to rebrand Harley Quinn, although not a completely uninteresting one. Number 4, Nocturna. Nocturna is the only villain on the show I'd say is an improvement on the comics version. Nocturna from the comics is basically just Catwoman but vampire, a thief of the night who wants to seduce Batman. But here they made her a kid instead, a kid with a weird condition that requires her to drain the souls or energy or something out of people to survive. They made her very tragic and also pretty damn creepy. The noise that's made when she sucks the soul out of people is quite unsettling. It's a very Batman the Animated Series style reimagining of a villain, very much like what that show did with Mad Hatter and Mr. Freeze. Out of all the rogues on the show, Nocturna is the only one who's got that B-Taz quality to her. Now with that said, she's still not my favorite on the show. Number 3. Catwoman. Catwoman on the show was pretty different from how she's usually portrayed, but still very much felt like Catwoman to me. Instead of being born into poverty and growing up on the mean streets of Gotham slums, this Selina Kyle is a wealthy, spoiled heiress. That is of course until she loses all of her money when her daddy is sent to prison due to fraud. This Selina Kyle thus becomes the Catwoman to get money so she can continue to afford her expensive habits. I suppose she could have gotten a job instead, but that naturally wouldn't have been nearly as fun. All of this is portrayed in a very light-hearted and comedic manner. Bruce Timm described his take on Selina as a 1930s screwball comedy character, and I can definitely see that. Yes, she's not as deep or tragic as most versions of Catwoman, but she is very fun and entertaining. I enjoyed her quite a lot, and think it's a perfectly fine alternate take on the character. Number 2, fittingly enough, is Two-Face. When promoting the show, Bruce Timm said this take on Two-Face would basically be a reverse, a bad guy who turns good after he's scarred, hence why scarring is on the opposite side of his face. Harvey Dent on this show starts off as a completely corrupt and douchebaggy DA, who later develops some more depth, and finally when he becomes Two-Face regrets all the wicked things he's done and sets out to set things right, with a gun of course. I find the idea of a reverse Two-Face like this to be pretty interesting, and I myself have toyed around with writing something like that before. Now naturally I despise an unlikable crooked DA Harvey Dent, but what if he becomes a better person after he's scarred? Then you've got something. It's obviously not an ideal Two-Face, but an interesting alternate take. The only reason I'm not ranking Two-Face as my number 1 on this list is because his character development wasn't handled the best. He was kinda clumsy and not built up very well. But in the end I still found him to be a fascinating and pretty disturbing character. The only time I felt truly invested in and engaged with this show was during the 2-part Two-Face finale. Perhaps because this was a character we'd seen throughout the entire show, and it finally felt like there were some actual real stakes. And now for the best villain on Batman the Caped Crusader, in my opinion. Number 1, Clayface. Clayface is the only villain who succeeded in what this show set out to do, and that's why I rank him as number 1. By that I mean, the show was supposed to be a Golden Age inspired take on Batman set in the 1940s and mainly borrowing elements from Batman's early comics, naturally through a modern lens of course. But outside of characters dressing like Humphrey Bogart and driving old cars, the show didn't really do that. No villain, for instance, felt like their Golden Age counterparts, at all. Sure, Catwoman dressed in her Golden Age costume, but character-wise, she wasn't really 1940s Selina Kyle. She was a brand new take, as was everyone else. That is, except Basil Carlo, aka Clayface. Now, Clayface wasn't exactly like his 1940s version, but he was heavily based on it, and even the changes made felt like they could have fit in perfectly with the Golden Age comics. This Clayface is not a big mud monster, instead he is a cloaked killer. He does have shape-shifting powers, but they're relegated to his face alone. Like in the Golden Age, he's an actor known for playing villainous roles. He then starts killing other people in the movie business while disguised in a cloak. His motivations are not exactly the same as in the original 1940s stories, but they're similar enough that honestly you barely notice the difference. Unlike all the other rogues on the show, Clayface truly feels like he stepped right off the page of an early Golden Age Batman comic. And there you have it, folks, my brief opinions on all the new villains seen in this new animated Batman show, Batman the Caped Crusader. To summarize my feelings on these villains and the show as a whole, it was kinda disappointing. The show was supposed to be an homage to Golden Age Batman, but for the most part it's not. And the tone is kind of all over the place. Some episodes are very dark and serious, some episodes are more comedic. Like, it doesn't really know what it wants to be. And the writing overall was kind of flimsy and not that well thought out in my opinion. And the villains overall were pretty lackluster. I don't think we got any truly classic take on any of the villains here. I can't really see any of these takes having a lasting impact on these characters. Possibly, maybe Nocturna, but that's about it. I mean, we've gotten way better takes on all of these villains in other places. So in the end, I guess my main feeling about this show is that it was kind of a waste of time.